prop.
So we are going to KMWK. Hickory ground, Ranger 348 Victor Romeo is at the north ramp ready to taxi for a departure to the northeast. All right, well, off we go. Hopefully recording here. We are in the Ranger. Got checked out in it yesterday. We're going to taxi down. We're going to take runway 24, which means we are heading out toward the west. I want to go northeast. Hickory ground 348 Victor Romeo is ready to depart runway 24. Come around to 24. Mixer's full in. 24 on the DG. Line her up.
All right, YouTube, it's Future Todd here, and the audio wasn't great on this portion of the flight. I actually recorded it using the Lightspeed Sierra app that can connect via Bluetooth to the headset. And what I didn't realize about that, because I guess I've done that once, but I didn't remember this happening. You can't hear any of the other audio. You don't actually hear everything that I'm hearing in the headset. You just hear me talking. So it's recording basically from the microphone instead of recording from the actual, sort of audio that's happening in the whole headset. So that wasn't working out. This was a flight, as I think I mentioned, going from Hickory, North Carolina to Mount Airy, North Carolina. A whole lot of fun, very interesting for me because I generally fly in Mississippi and the South, to fly over some of this terrain here, to fly kind of through this, patchy clouds. A lot of fun, a little bit to think about just in terms of what was going on with the altitudes and airports and all that around here, and even thinking about where we would put this plane down. The other thing that was fun about this flight was the opportunity to fly a different aircraft. I had looked around at the airports in this area and noticed that this Vashon Ranger was available for rent. I went out and got checked out in it, got a few lessons in how to fly, not a few, one lesson in how to fly this plane, how it's different from others, the center stick, the light loading that it has, the LSA features of it, some other fun stuff. So let's go through and talk about the Vashon Ranger. What are the top 7 things that I can point out about it in case you're thinking about buying this plane? Number 1, as you can see, just looking at it, and you can tell a little bit from the shots inside the cabin, it's very much like a Cessna 150. I think it was based on the idea of building a modern kind of Cessna 150 using the LSA rules, using the light sport rules. It's a plane that is going to be under light sport right now. Gross, meaning 320 pounds is the most it can have with people and fuel in it. So I think when it is empty, I should look this up and tell you, but it's something, around the range of 800 pounds. So it's lighter than a Cessna 150, built to be modern, built to be, current. It uses the same engine as the Cessna 162 did, which of course was kind of built to be a modern Cessna 150, but it's the 0200, which is a very reliable. It's the engine that was in most of the Cessna 150s until they went to Cessna 152, when that's changed over a Lycoming. So this is a Continental 0200. It's a 100 horsepower engine, so not particularly powerful, but it is reliable. It's using 70-year-old technology. It's using a 4-banger that's just been around for a long time. So it sips fuel. I mean, for the most part, it'd be interesting if this plane, I'd say, had a Rotax instead of a Cessna, instead of a Continental. I think the reason is probably even something that I heard the CFI say when I was talking to him, which is for a flight school, for certain types of buyers, I think that Continental engine that's been around for so long feels like it's just going to be more reliable, or at least it's going to be something that makes a little more sense, to pilots who've been around for a while. The Rotax has a couple things that are a little different about it. It's come on in recent years, and it's certainly a fantastic engine, and perhaps more efficient, a little faster. But they went with kind of a more conservative choice, something that works just fine, and kind of fits the mission, right? So third, and this is pretty different from something like a Cessna 150, a little more like that Cessna 162 again, is it has a full Dynon glass panel, including all the engine monitoring you need, GPS functions. You can go into the panel and figure out what your radio frequencies are for where you're headed. You can plan a whole trip through it. Very cool to have that kind of glass in an airplane like this. You can actually have, I think there's a base model that just has one panel for the pilot, or then you can have both panels there, and it's like $30,000 more to have the second panel. I guess I assume there's a little more that comes with that model of the plane, but very nice to have that, which brings me to number 4, which is it's got the Dynon autopilot in it. So that's really a neat kind of calculus for this plane. Light sport, 2-place, 100 horsepower engine, but with that autopilot, it becomes something that, it's a little more realistic to think about flying this plane 300, 500, 600 nautical miles, right? And it'd be a longer flight, a longer day to go even further than that. But when you have the autopilot, and the autopilot's doing a lot of the work when you're in flight, and you're just guiding it, or you're just setting GPS and watching out for weather and dealing with the radio, then I think that does take a lot of stress off the pilot. And if it's VFR, which it has to be for a light sport, then it's hopefully a reasonably nice day. And that could really make it more of a commuter, make it something that if you were in like North Carolina, like this is, where you could get to a lot of different places in a few hours, it could be fun to have this little Ranger. Efficient, new technology, all of the glass in it, and all that. So it has a center stick that I found, I was curious as to what that transition would be like, flying mostly with yokes to flying to the center stick, and it was kind of a non-issue. I was surprised by how easy it was to transition to that. In fact, there are certain advantages to just being able to rest your hand on your leg. You're not, constantly reaching out for the yoke like you are in a plane with the yoke. But really, the only major problem I had with the center stick is it actually makes the plane more difficult to get into, considering how small it is, and considering that the seat position doesn't change. You actually change the rudder pedals. You have to go in there and pull a little cotter pin and pull the rudder pedals toward you if you're shorter, or away from you if you're taller. The seat position stays where it is. Well, to get in the plane, you've got to have, as the pilot, your left foot on the ground, and your right foot has to go up all the way around the center stick on the seat before you can really pick your left foot up. So it's, I guess if you're 6'5", it's probably pretty easy to do. But if you're shorter, if you're older, if you're not as agile, then it would be kind of a pain. It must be an interesting trade-off to have done that. It actually makes me realize why the Cessna 162 had that stoke that they talked about, which is actually, it's like a stick, but it didn't have the stick in the ground, right? It actually had it coming out from under the panel, and that probably was because it made it a little easier to get into. And one day I'm going to fly a 162. I've always been kind of interested in them. A lot of people criticize them. Another thing, I guess it's like a 162, I think, is the Vashon Ranger has, and you can see it in these shots here, it has a free-castering nose wheel. So kind of like a Grumman has that castering nose wheel. On the ground, you're using a lot more differential braking to steer the plane. I really like it. I know a lot of people complain or have to at least get used to the differential braking on the free-castering nose wheel, but I liked it. I think the only thing, taxiing is easy. I think the only thing that is a little complicated is just thinking about it when you're landing. That you're going, when you put the nose down, you're not going to have quite as much control over that you need to stay. You need to kind of get on the brakes sooner than you sometimes would. And then when you're taking off, you have to think about that nose wheel when you're first putting in power, because it can be pointed in the direction you didn't expect. So you may have to stay on the brakes while you're putting in a little power just to get it straightened out. But other than that, that was not too bad. The cargo space is good on this plane, which is kind of ironic because the useful load isn't that good. I think on this aircraft in particular, the CFI told me the useful load was about 420 pounds. And usable fuel is a little higher than typical for those Cessna trainers. It's 27, the POH actually says 27.6 gallons of fuel are usable. So if you were going to go full fuel, that's at least 160 some odd pounds for the fuel, and then you're looking at, 300 to 320 pounds for people. If you had two people, it gets tough. It's pretty much a no-go. You're talking about if you've got, say, two people who weigh 170 pounds each, that would be 340, and make the math easy on us, like 80 pounds of fuel left over. So you're talking about, 13 gallons. Not a lot. Now, the assumption is that when Mosaic passes and LSAs are allowed to operate at a higher useful load, that this plane will be ready for it because it's been tested for higher loads. So that could be relatively soon. So you could end up with this two-place airplane that could actually take two people and some cargo and full fuel, and at say 6 gallons per hour conservative, that's well over 4 hours of flying. It might be 4 hours of flying plus a VFR reserve. I don't think Mosaic is going to let people fly IFR in these planes, which is too bad. Except that you could go experimental with it, drop out of LSA. But anyway, so that's right now is a challenge, but it could be that it's worth it for someone to invest in this plane, knowing that Mosaic is coming and that Vashon is likely to benefit from that and be able to go with more fuel. The final thing I'd say about this plane is light sports are light, and I was surprised. This is the first light sport that I've flown left seat in. I did fly right seat in a Gobosh 700 that a guy had for sale here in Mississippi, and I went and checked it out. I didn't fly it much. We just kind of did the pattern, and just a little bit of practice in the pattern. This plane, you could certainly feel the bumps in the air. It was a little bumpy, I remember, on the flight back from Mount Airy, but it was the pattern and it was landing it that was where you really kind of saw some stuff. So I will put this first landing in here, and you'll see that one of the things I'm used to in my Tomahawk at this point, a low wing airplane that for its size, weighs a little more than this one does, is that it'll lose altitude pretty quickly in the pattern. So when I come, beam the numbers and pull power, stick the nose down, and it'll start to lose altitude pretty quickly. In this plane, it's more difficult to get it to lose altitude, and the flaps, even though I think the flaps would go to 40 degrees, they weren't exactly like Cessna flaps in that sense. You didn't feel like you were coming straight down with those barn doors on. So what I end up doing on this landing is slipping it in, which is something that I had practiced with the CFI, which was kind of fun to do with the center stick and the rudders. Little more active of a flying maneuver, I guess, than you would feel sometimes in playing with the yoke. But otherwise, you have to get it down over the runway. You have to dance with it a little bit, stay on those rudder pedals because it's getting moved around a lot at the lighter weight with the high wing and all that. But so that's my take on the Vashon Ranger. I would say that I think this plane could be had new for something like $130,000. I don't know that there are many on the market used, and because I'm not sure how many of them that they've made. But as they age a little bit, they may be something to look for on the used market. Certainly, there are a number of different LSAs out there that are trying to fill this niche. I feel like the Ranger has done a good job of actually staying relatively inexpensive compared to a lot of LSAs that just, they start out saying that they're going to cost $80,000 and they just keep going up and up and up. I think the biggest miss on this plane is having that center stick and then having doors so that you come in under the wing, a high wing aircraft and doors under the wing. You miss out on the fact that airplanes that have high wings tend to be a little easier for folks to get into. And center stick aircraft tend to be low wing, step up on the wing and then step into the cockpit that way, which makes a little more sense dealing with the stick, right? So it was an interesting choice. I'm not sure why they did it, unless it was just a combination of um, maybe it's a little easier to manufacture, easier to deal with the full glass if you have the stick instead of having a yoke there to deal with as well. I don't know. I don't know if it's I could imagine it being a little cheaper to do it that way. So that could help with the cost of the overall aircraft. And it's fun to fly, right? But at the end of the day, it's a tough plane to get into, which is a little strange, because I kind of imagine it as being the perfect plane for kind of a yuppie couple, hopefully a yuppie couple that doesn't weigh a whole lot, who are flying around in Washington State and going out to the lavender fields and buying some dark chocolate and looking at the whales and all that. It'd be a great plane for all that. Oh, I should have mentioned this too. Good cross ventilation. You can see in this shot here that it's got those kind of sliding windows on each side. You can get those open while you're in the air. Nice ventilation for that. It was a nice day anyway, so it was hard to tell what it would be like in oppressive heat. But that was nice to have. So anyway, that's the Vashon Ranger. I recommend it if you got the money for it. I think it was a fun plane to fly. I love the autopilot. I love the full glass. I still have to kind of get used to it. I also like a six pack because it's something that I'm really used to. But having these toys was nice. The one thing that was very interesting, considering how much digital technology is in this plane, is it really has one radio. And so you're actually switching frequencies around to get to the weather. If I had been up this flight, I didn't need to get up with ATC, but if I had been up with ATC, then I would have had to navigate switching over to get the weather. It probably has the ability to monitor a second channel, but I couldn't figure that out, and didn't know what I was doing on that little radio there. But didn't have two radios, so something to think about. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the video. We'll go land this plane, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you can see more flights like this. Have a good one.
All right, 65 knots and we're high. .63 knots. We're down here.